What's up, everybody? I'm Levi with the Veritas 21 podcast. This is the Real Talk radio show, and I got an awesome guest with me, Jordan Christian, and we're going to be talking about his story, kind of some of the things he's went through throughout life, and just sharing his personal testimony. Jordan and I may progress into doing some further episodes and talking about some things, but I met Jordan a couple weeks ago. And it was at a family event, and we just sat in the corner pretty much the whole time talking for like 2-3 hours. And his testimony was, to me, was inspirational. And I hope you as a listener, you'll be able to get something from this podcast. How are you doing, Jordan?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing good. Tell the listeners about yourself, dude. Where are you from? What do you do? Kind of, start there.
I'm originally from Concordia, Kansas. That's where I went to high school. From there, it's been a journey through some time in the service. I was in the military, and then after that, I went through college, and then I was a business owner for a while, and there was marriage, and then that ended in divorce. And right now I work at Great Plains or Land Pride, and I run an offline assembly area making snowblowers.
Nice. And how old are you?
I'm 38.
38. Okay, so you got some experience underneath your belt then, huh?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. So you said you served in the military. How long did you serve in the military for?
6 years.
Okay. And was that the Marines or the Air Force or what branch?
Army.
The Army. Okay. Awesome. Did you ever serve overseas?
Yes, I did. I've actually been to 17 countries. I did 2 deployments in Iraq, 1 in Afghanistan, spent a year in Korea. Did a lot of traveling. A part of my job was to train special forces units in other countries. So I did a lot of travel like that. So.
Did you have any like active combat experience doing that?
Yes.
Did you have tours in Iraq?
Yes, two tours in Iraq and 1 in Afghanistan.
Well, thank you. I appreciate your service. And of course, we won't get into all the things you probably experienced. And so then you graduate, you got done, you retired from the service, and then you went to college. What did you go to college for?
I got a master's in exercise science and sports nutrition from the University of Baltimore, Maryland.
And was that was a bachelor's degree?
Master's.
A master's. Wow, phenomenal. And then you got married. How did you meet your wife at the time? Like, how did that go?
I had just gotten out of the military. Wasn't sure what I was going to do. My family invited me back to Kansas to kind of figure out what my next move was, and I met her at a Taco John's.
Were you working there, or you're just ordering some tacos and she walked up and, oh, there's your wife, there's your future wife right there?
I don't know, but it's kind of how it happened. I was ordering some tacos.
And then you had some kids, right?
Yes, I did.
How many kids did you have?
I had 2 little girls, Alina and Kyrie.
Nice. How did so start with that story that you were telling me that night with the family, if you would like.
Okay. Yeah, that's kind of where my testimony starts. In my early and mid 20s, I was married, and I had the 2 little girls, and my wife at the time, she was working at a gas station a couple blocks away, and she began to have an affair with the owner of the gas station. She was 25, he was 56. It was really weird, but he was rich, He was letting her drive his fancy car and stuff. And so like 3 days before Christmas, I basically left the house. I was kind of told to, and we never got back together or tried. She just literally was with him from then on out. We eventually divorced, and I moved to Hayes and started a construction company. I had owned a fitness center in Concordia at the time, and it closed down when I divorced. But I moved out there. She married him, and I was just the only contact I had with her was regarding my daughters. I had them for regular visits. We had a good relationship, good time together. It wasn't as much as I wanted, but it was more than a lot of dads are able to get, and I was pretty blessed with that, especially considering I lived, several hours away. On the morning of my 31st birthday, which I was supposed to have my daughters for a visit and pick them up that day, I had received I had a missed phone call on my phone, and it was a 614 number, so I automatically assumed that it was, from my hometown, that it was my ex-wife calling me, that she had either gotten a new number or she was calling from her husband's number, which I had never had before that. And so I thought it was probably her calling to figure out the arrangements on where and when I was going to meet her and pick them up. So I go to the bathroom, I come back, and I call the number back, and it was DCF that had been trying to get a hold of me. My 4-year-old and 7-year-old daughters had been flown by helicopter from Concordia to Wichita and were in ICU. Their stepfather had taken them into a basement and viciously raped them. In all, they spent 3 days in ICU and 13 days total in the hospital. Jack was he was on the run, and they eventually arrested him, and he went to jail. Was facing 4 off-grid person felonies and 2 level 1 person felonies, and had an $870,000 bond. After only being there for 3 weeks, they OR'd him out. Half the jailers and half the inmates back in my hometown were like my old classmates. And apparently he had been harassed, and so the county considered him a liability and let him out. And of course, owning a gas station, he was also a retired firefighter. So he had money. He got himself a lawyer, and eventually he took a plea deal to 1 count of aggravated solicitation of a minor, 18-month community corrections, lifetime registry as a sex offender, and no prison time. That happened later. I kind of skipped over my part in the story, but after this thing had happened to my daughters had been taken into emergency state custody, and they were starting to treat me as if I was the offending, or one of the offending parents in this ordeal. I was having to jump through all these retarded hoops all the time just to see my kids. I had never done anything to them nor was there any insinuation that I had or anything of that nature. but they ended up putting my children in foster care even further east, a whole 2 more hours out of the way. So I was 6 hours away from them. And around this time, I began to get really angry inside. Of course, I was angry at him for what he did to my daughters. I was angry at their mother for having ever put them in that kind of situation. I was angry at God more than anything and anyone. I was angry at God. I couldn't understand how this could have happened. I was always a Christian. Anyway, I began to use drugs. I dabbled in substance abuse throughout my life. But one particular day, I received notification that my daughters were being split into 2 separate foster homes. Didn't know if it was going to be temporary or what, but that they were, the 2 of them were overwhelming for the family that had taken them in. And so after everything that my little girls had been through, they were going to split them up into 2 strangers' houses. And I got really upset. At God, at the system, at everything. And I decided I was going to go to this bar and I was going to get plastered drunk, which was not something I ever did. I was never a drinker, but I needed something. So I go to this bar and I'm drinking, and I run into some students that I knew. I also worked part-time out there as an administrative tutor, and they invited me to this party. I'd kind of confided in a couple of them previously about what had happened with my daughters and everything, and so they knew I was going through it, and they wanted me to, come and hang out with these guys and at this party. And even though they were, younger than me and not my crowd, I was looking for something different. I needed to get my mind off things. I wanted to get trashed. And so I go to this party, and I don't remember a lot of it, but I do remember that somehow I ended up in the bathroom doing a line of speed off the back of a toilet. I had done meth before, but it was never really my thing. And I don't know if it was just not good meth or what, but for the next 36 hours, I was going a million miles an hour. I went home and got on the internet, and I studied what to expect in raising children that have been through this kind of trauma, how to relate to them, how to be a good dad to them. And then I studied a bunch of stuff about the law and child in need of care cases and all this stuff. And I spent a day and a night doing this, all tweaked out on meth. And when I eventually crashed and woke up, I was like, well, I'm glad that's over with, and went about my business. But as soon as I started trying to bounce back to my normal routine of working, and I'm still dealing with all this stuff in my heart and my head, I just feel burnt out on life. I'm still mad at God. I feel like, what's the point of any of this and all this? Oh, okay, I got to get this job done. I have a contract. So after several days of dealing with this, I decide one day that I'm going to hit up this dude from the party. And, my excuse is I could use some of that energy to get things done. I'm not really me right now. I'm not going to become one of those crazy tweakers peeking through tinfoil, my basement window and stuff like that. And so after this point, I become a full-time functional user. When I found out what had happened with my daughters being split up and stuff, and I had gotten really loaded, I was plastered drunk and spun out heavily on a drug that I'd never, tampered with in this kind of quantity. And I came up with this idea that I was going to make Jack pay. So I took my girlfriend's truck and I took a pipe and I drove 3.5 hours. I kicked in his door and I beat him nearly to death with a lead pipe. And as I was swinging this pipe, I saw like this flash of this young woman looking at me through glass. And I don't know what my daughters will look like when they're adults, but I know that when I looked into that woman's face that was looking at me, that it was my youngest. It was Kyrie that was looking at me, and I was in prison. And so I stopped. I know that if I hadn't seen what I saw in that moment, I would have killed him. Kid, sorry.
You're good.
Anyway, I went on the run for a little bit, just completely bewildered and baffled by what I did. And I'm still crashing off these drugs and everything. And I remember I ran out into this field. Well, I was walking down this road trying to get out of town, and it's a dirt road, but from the dirt road, you could still see the interstate. You
were still strung out on the methamphetamine though at the time, right? So were you going after that situation? Were you going through like a moment of like hysteria or paranoia at that time, trying to get out of town, and after that experience?
Some, but I was more in shock with myself. I couldn't believe what I'd done. I mean, there was that part of me that wanted to do it, that it felt good to do it, that it was somehow justified, but there was this part that was devastated and disgusted. Like, what did I become? Why did I let this affect me like that? And how, if ever, can I recover from it? My daughters aren't going to see me as a hero that stood up for them and avenged them. They're going to see me as an idiot who made a stupid choice and destroyed his life, and now I'm not going to probably be able to have a relationship with them. That's what's going through my head, and all I can think is that for the moment, I thought that I wanted to try to find them and tell them goodbye before I ended up getting arrested. But I was paranoid to do that too, because I thought that would just make things worse, and they'd end up, telling me I couldn't be around them at all, as if I was some crazy dude going after his kids or something. So I decided I was going to go on the run until I don't know what. Part of me wanted to jump off a bridge. Part of me wanted to disappear in a ghetto somewhere. And part of me thought I needed to go turn myself in immediately and just get it over with. But I didn't know. I was pretty messed up and confused. And as I'm going down this dirt road, I get paranoid that the cars driving by are going to see me and that the cops are already hunting for me. So I decide to beeline out into this field, and I find like this bald spot, like it's muddy. But if I lay down in it and huddle lower than the grass or whatever it was, that nobody driving by will see me. So I laid down in that spot, curled up in the fetal position, and I cried, and I slept, and I yelled at God. I yelled at him a lot. And I cried some more. And eventually I decided that there was no God. And so that my future was in my hands based on the choices that I have made and that I was going to make next. So I decided to get up and go turn myself in, and that's exactly what I did. Originally, I was looking at aggravated burglary, criminal threat, attempted murder, and a whole bunch of other stuff. And I stayed in jail. I didn't get an OR bond.
Not like he did.
No, not like he did. Eventually, they came at me with a plea that I couldn't refuse. They were going to give me a 5-year underlying sentence, some community correction time, and let me out. And I was going to plead to aggravated battery, criminal threat, and obstruction of justice, which in comparison was way better. And
just a question there. Why obstruction of justice?
I would not tell them where the pipe was.
Oh, okay.
That's really what it came to. I'll tell anybody now, I chucked it off a bridge into a river, man. I was like,
got to get rid of it, you know? Yeah.
Right. But at the time, I wouldn't tell them because I was afraid, then they'll have physical evidence against me and blah, blah, blah. But considering what I was facing and what they would have pushed for in a trial that I was doomed to lose, now looking back, it was a blessing to be given that opportunity. But my problems didn't stop there. When I got out, I was even in worse boat as far as being able to have a relationship and see my daughters. They were supervised for 1 hour every other month. And I had to find a way to get the 6 hours there and 6 hours back. And it was because I had, been in jail and everything. I had messed up a lot of contracts that I had with my business. I lost my job as an administrative tutor because I had these felonies. So working as a strength and conditioning coach, tutoring these college kids was gone. And of course, instead of taking personal responsibility, which part of me did, but the majority of me did not, I was even madder at God, madder at the system, madder at everybody who put me in this situation, and maddest at the person who started it all. And so I continued to use drugs. And I went from a very functional user in the beginning to where within months, less than a year, I went from, I'd been using for almost a year that all this played out. If you'd have told any of the professional associates of mine, close friends, relatives that I was using meth, they would have been mad at you for lying about me. I still paid my bills. I was still clean. I was still healthy. I was a functional user. Mm-hmm. But after I had gotten out of jail and was experiencing the aftermath, which could have been much worse, but the aftermath of what I had done and everything, I began to use heavier and heavier.
So to clarify, is this like a moment between jail and prison then?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry. Go ahead.
I went from the occasional bump to be up for work or to get things done to intravenous use in less than a year. And I never honestly got to like the crazy tweaker kind of thing, I mean, I saw him and I met him, plenty of them, and was paranoid that would ever be me. Right. But I got to where I was using pretty heavy. And eventually I was failing UAs. and it led to me getting revoked and sent to do my underlying sentence, which I did not do the entirety of it. This is kind of where my testimony actually begins. That's just the backstory. I remember when I was in jail waiting for the bus to come pick me up and take me to what's called RDU. For those of you who don't know, it's kind of like a temporary hold that's separate from the prison. It's still prison. You're still locked down, but it's separated from general public and everything. And you go through about 2 weeks or more, depending on how flooded they are, of screening and testing and examinations. So they figure out where to put you, what your needs are, who you can't be around, what you might be eligible for, things like that.
Wow, I didn't know they did all that. That's crazy. Now, were these like psych
Yeah.
tests or what?
There was a little bit of that. I even did an IQ test. I don't remember what, they never did tell me what my score was.
Yeah, they're like, he's too smart to be around that guy. We don't want them to collaborate.
Well, as part of it too is because prison is supposed to be about rehab. So if somebody comes in and they find out they're illiterate, they give them the opportunity to do programs to learn how to read and stuff.
Right.
Those things are available to everybody that goes in. I will say that the people that come out of prison and say, oh, prison doesn't rehabilitate you, they didn't let themselves be rehabilitated by it.
They made the choice not to be corrected, essentially. I mean, that's the reason why it's called the Department of Corrections, at least in the state of Kansas.
Right. Well, everything is what you make of it. Now, granted, I will say that there are some people from some cultures, some races, that when they go in there, there's things that are expected of them, and they don't really have a safe option. But out here in Kansas, where the majority of us are just regular people that aren't gangbanging or certain, I'm not trying to sound racist, but skin colors, because they automatically get assumed that they're supposed to be clicked up. You do have the freedom to make those choices more. Mm-hmm. And I had told myself in my mind that the moment that I was in a cell alone, that I was going to have this discussion that had been forming in my mind that I was going to have with God. I know where it came from now, but at the time I just felt like it was something that needed to be said, needed to be done once and for all, to settle the matter of if God's real, if he's really there, does he really care? All that kind of stuff.
What were kind of your thoughts at the time? Were they like, how could God allow this? If God was real, how could he allow this to happen to my daughters? And how could I end up in the position that I'm in, going through the military, going through college, getting my master's, getting married, having kids, and then experiencing that. And so you're feeling at that time, like, how could God allow all of this to happen in my life? Is that kind of where you're meeting?
Well, I eventually got the answer to that question, but that was my primary question. Mm-hmm. Like, if I deserve some things, if I have some consequences, why did it have to fall on them? Why did it have to involve them? And, like I said, I've been around the world. And so I've seen all kinds of unjustified tragedy fall on innocent people. Mm-hmm. But at the time, I was taking it personal with God. And so not even my third day in RDU, the cellie that I had, he was a few days or weeks ahead of me in the process. He was going to be gone for pretty much the whole day. And I hadn't really started anything, so I was going to be in my cell for 23 hours. And I literally remember staying awake the whole night, rehearsing what I was going to say to God, what I was going to do. as soon as my cellie left, and he was halfway down the run. And it's pretty much how things happened. When he left, I had decided I was going to lay down prostrate on the ground, like the most humble position I could find, and I was going to beg him to prove that he's real. That if you are real, but more than that, if you're the God that the Bible says that you say you are, a God of love, a God of wisdom, a God of compassion, a God of mercy and grace, and all these things, that you are personally invested in all of us, and that you want this real, intimate, loving relationship with us, then I need to see that. I need to know that. I need proof that it's real. I can't go on. I thought I was a Christian my whole life, but at this point, it's not just questioning my faith. At this point, I realized that all the things that I thought I believed and said about my Christianity weren't as genuine as I thought I had. I could say I'm a Christian and I would die for Christ and say it with conviction, but in this moment, when I heard the phrase, "Do you have a relationship with Jesus?" it sounded like a church cliche to me. I don't know what that looks like. I've been a Christian my whole life, and I have no idea what a relationship with Jesus really looks or feels like. And so I'm like, what's real and what's not, God? And so I'm having this passionate thing with him, and I get really uncomfortable on the floor, so I decide I'm going to kneel on my bunk, and then I'm like, okay, that's hard on my knees, so I decide I'm going to lay in my bunk. And I keep telling myself I'm not going to fall asleep, I'm not going to get too relaxed and let my mind wander. Then I'm having this discussion, and I'm not going to be done with it or satisfied until I get an answer. And I know you can't give God ultimatums, but in my head I'm telling myself that if I don't hear something, if I don't get something, I'm done with him. I was like ready to go out into prison and just let it all go. I don't care what kind of trouble I get myself in. I was going to go out there, and you think you're hateful? You want to know why I'm hateful now? You want to see if you're bigger and scarier than me? I got nothing to lose. I was feeling that kind of way. That was the ultimatum I was having with myself and God, that I either get him, the fullness of him right now, or there is no point in living. And while I'm yelling and crying and conversating with him, there was like a voice, and it wasn't an audible voice. It wasn't even a voice in my head. It was just like something, a thought, told me that I needed to scream the word out. And I can't really describe it, because there was something in me that all it said was out. But there was like further instructions that I just somehow understood that I needed to scream it, and I needed to scream it with everything in me. And as I'm analyzing this, trying to make sense of it, something tells me that maybe it's from God. So my first thought is, really? That's your fucking answer? Excuse my French, but that's your answer. Okay, so if it's not God, then I am crazy now. So I'm going to yell it. I'm going to scream it. I'm going to scream it like a crazy man locked up in a metal and concrete room, just so everybody can hear what they expect to hear from a place like this. I'm going to scream it out of spite to God. But I'm going to do it. And I did. And as soon as that word uttered from within me, as loud and powerful as I could, I didn't care if guards came with batons, I yelled it as loud as I could. And as soon as I did, something like fell on me. I can't describe it other than like it was a supernatural force that was pressing me into the bunk. Now, you guys can't see me, but I'm 6'2", 250 pounds. I'm a former professional and Olympic athlete. I'm not just a small, regular dude physically. Whatever was pressing me into the bunk was powerful. I couldn't breathe. It was terrifying. I could barely wince. Tears were coming out of my eyes. My eyes were bulging in panic. I couldn't believe what was happening. It was pressing me in my chest, pinning me to the bunk. And I was full of this fear, and my thought was, because I screamed out against God in spite, now I'm in the devil's house. This is where all the demons hang out. And all this stuff that I've been doing, the drugs, the violent crime, the things I had to say to and about God, I had basically put myself, now the devil was going to have his way. There was nothing between me and them now. I'm in their house. That was what I was thinking, that I had finally fully opened myself to full, unadulterated attack from demons, and that I was going to die there. And I remember that I was like, God, no, not like this. I'm sorry. Like, that was just like an instant thought. But as soon as that part of me humbled itself enough inside to say that same voice came with an instruction. It said off. And it was just the word off. But when I heard or felt it inside, like it seemed to come with instructions, to yell it, to scream it, to mean it. And I'm like, part of me is like, I don't know if I want to do this again. Last time I said it, I'm still experiencing this, but my brain's running because my body can't do anything. And it took everything I had physically, to scream that word, the word off. And I managed to bellow it. I mean loud. Between those two words and the crying that I did during this session, my voice was pretty much gone and hoarse for like the next 7 or 8 days.
So at this point, everybody in all the other cells, the only thing they know of what's going on is you've said out and off at the top of your lungs, screaming.
If you can hear me or were paying attention.
Yeah.
This isn't regular prison cells. This is, when you get there, they treat you like you might be Jeffrey Dahmer because they don't know yet.
Yeah.
Everybody comes into RDU as if they're supermax custody until they get through the processing, and they could be minimum. But while they're there, they're 23-hour lockdown. But as soon as I screamed this word, instantly there was relief. And it wasn't just physical relief. I felt like I had listened to the right voice. I felt that whatever had been separating me from knowing and experiencing the love of God was gone. Like I said, I spent my whole life believing I was a Christian, but I believe in that moment and the prayer that followed, which was pretty passionate, that in that moment I was actually truly born again. Because I haven't been the same a day since. I've been on fire for the Lord. I've been on fire for people. I've had a whole different perspective about everything. I believe I was born again that day. And from the moment that I was first allowed to come out of my cell and be around other inmates, I began to tell people about Jesus, who he really is. I began to actually develop and understand and have confirmation of a relationship with Jesus. Not just like the one you sit in the pew and nod your head, yes, I have a relationship with, I mean real. And to know it was real, I had to tell other people that it's not just something that you say. It's not something that is, like I said, church cliche, that it's real.
Yeah. It's thrown out so lightly.
I spent time in the Word like crazy. And I began to, tell everybody about Jesus. Within 3 weeks, I had the nickname Preacher Man, which eventually pretty much everybody in KDOC all across Kansas, the facility, knows me as that. I was asked to deliver sermons for the chaplains on Sunday. I was given special permission and under certain circumstances through DOC and the Secretary of Corrections to be able to share my testimony in other facilities. I began to network with prison ministries that were coming in, and there were some church groups that came in that were wanting to be established prison ministries, and I helped them to establish one in multiple facilities. And this is part of the testimony I want to share briefly. Through this whole process, one of the first things that God, the Holy Spirit, convicted me of was forgiving the man who hurt my daughters. And anybody can say, I forgive you, or I forgive that person. But unless it's a real heart forgiveness, it's not anything more than lip service. Now, I don't believe in forgive and forget, because I believe that when you forget, you're forfeiting wisdom that you were meant to acquire through an experience. But forgiveness is a change of heart. It's letting a debt go. It's saying that I'm not carrying this. This is between you and Jesus. As for me, I'm choosing to obey Christ and forgive you, erase your debt, whatever I thought you owe me. I'm no longer offended. It's done. And so I did it out of obedience. I even said it out loud. But it didn't happen overnight. I don't know how many times I picked that right back up off the altar and would be sitting there stewing. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for him. Or, those kind of things. For about a year of my 2.5 years in there, even while I was growing in the Spirit and became a spiritual leader, and I was baptizing people, but I had to continually rope myself in and say, no, I'm not doing this. I forgave him out of obedience to Jesus Christ. I didn't want to. I didn't feel like I should have to. But what I noticed is that the more I continued just to do it out of obedience, that God began to change my heart. I began to wonder, what would twist a man into doing something so heinous? I began to wonder why a person like him could hate an ex of their spouse so much that they would do something like that to his children just to spite him. This had nothing to do with them. He didn't want to drive partway across Kansas to bring my girls to me on my birthday. He had some kind of seething hatred for me, and I'd never even talked to the man. But my heart began to change. And so did my ministry. As I shared this testimony and stuff, and then I would have the opportunity to speak with people about forgiveness, because there's a lot of bitter people in prison. People that need forgiveness, that just want to be forgiven, And they have people that they have a very hard time forgiving. And I would tell them, I'd be like, man, if I can forgive this man for what he did, I can forgive anyone for anything. And so can you. Because that's what Jesus did, isn't it? He died on the cross for that man just as much as he did for me. And even though that is probably the most heinous and hated crime in the world, especially in prison, I began to have a really strong ministry among sex offenders, including those that were accused of crimes against children or minors. I'm not saying that I got into their politics. I didn't defend them when they owed somebody rent or something like that. But I shared Christ with them. And if anybody had a problem with me sitting down and talking to this Mo, I let them know. I was like, dude, I'm not that guy.
What's a Mo?
Child molester.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm sharing Jesus with this person. I'm not intimidated by what anybody has to say or gangs or any of that stuff. This is about Jesus. And nobody had any problems with that. I actually never had any problems with anyone. I was blessed to share Jesus and be known as that guy. I would have hardcore Muslims come up to me and be like, look, man, I know that like I'm a Muslim and you're a Christian and, you know, I respect that and everything, man. But preacher, man, I was just wondering, you know, my little brother down in Louisiana, he got shot up, man. Would you pray for him? And what God did in me and for me was pouring out in the lives of hundreds of men from all walks of life. And I began to love them and care about them. I have stacks of manila envelopes full of letters that they gave me to keep and remember them by while I was in, and I've received several since I've been out of them just thanking me for leading them to Christ or edifying them and all these things. And I let God use me because I let him have my heart. And when I let him have my heart, he began to transform my heart into being like his. That's what it's all about. It was put on my heart one day that when I got out, I was going to find a way to get into prison ministry. Now, as a felon, you're not supposed to be able to do that. You're not supposed to be able to go into a facility or anything, and it doesn't even matter if you're off parole or post-release or any of that stuff. Just having a felony bars you from that. You couldn't even really go visit your brother if you got a felony and stuff like that. They do make special considerations sometimes, but I've always heard it's a crazy process and it takes something extreme. But it was in my heart, and I knew that if this was God's calling, that not the Red Sea, not Pharaoh's chariots, nothing would stop it from happening. And I began to pray towards that end, and I drafted up a logo and all this stuff, and I came up with like what type of ministries we would do, which would include prison and jail ministries. And, you know, I ran it by some of the jail ministries and churches that were coming in and the chaplains in the prison system, and told them that this is what's on my heart, and they were all supporting me. And when I eventually got out, 2 prison ministries, 2 churches, 2 chaplains, and the head of chaplaincy right in El Dorado petitioned directly to the Secretary of Corrections to get me special permission as a felon to bring my ministry into prisons. And I've been doing that since. I once was lost, but now I'm found.
As cliche as it sounds, but your story is so true, you know? And like getting to that point where you're at now is almost like, I don't know, I would imagine it feels like a whole new life from any experiences and successes you had previously before any of that experience happened, you know, and getting to the point now where it comes out into your life and how all that played out, man. That's a phenomenal testimony. How many people do you generally like have impact on with running your ministry, and how often do you do it?
Well, I go to the prisons if they're not like on some kind of security lockdown or something, which we ran into a couple months ago, every other month. And then on the off months, I do the jail visits, and I do 9 different jails now.
Wow. And that's all like around the state of Kansas then?
Yes.
That's awesome, man. Well, honestly, I mean, I'm just going to be straightforward, dude. You covered like, I mean, obviously you probably have told that a bunch of times, you know, giving your testimony, and, you know, I don't know that I really have any questions for you, man. You covered like all the details that I would ask about, which is pretty freaking awesome if you ask me. But is there anything else you want to say on that?
Well, that was awesome.
It's all good. We can edit that part out. Yeah, I'm still here.
No, leave it in there. I'm only human. What I can say is to anybody that's gone through tragedies, particularly to those who have either created their own tragedy or they responded to a tragedy in the wrong way, and it created this domino effect of consequences, that it doesn't have to end in death and separation from God or any dream or aspiration. I was coming out of there. I didn't mention this, but while I was locked up, my ex-wife had remarried another rich guy. They got an attorney and got permission to move with my daughters to Illinois. So one of the lasting consequences of this tragedy is that I basically don't have a relationship with my daughters, which was once ridiculously close and awesome. But there's always hope. There's still hope.
How old are they now?
Not just 14 and 11. It's that's the hard part to wrap my mind around right now. But God, He's in the business of taking tragedy and turning it into triumph. He makes victims into victors. But we have to come and surrender to Him. We have to pursue Him. The Word says that He is a rewarder of those who diligently seek Him. And that word diligence, it doesn't just mean attention to detail or earnest. I mean, those are correct translations, but the original word diligent that was translated diligence was actually a Greek word that was adopted from Latin, and that was diligere. And that word diligere means to love with passion. So what he's saying in that passage is that He is a rewarder of those that passionately love to seek Him. You go after Him, it shows faith. You wouldn't earnestly and diligently seek something you didn't believe was real. And what did He say? He said, ask,
and you shall receive.
Seek and knock. Right, exactly. And everybody's experience of seeking and finding Him is going to be different. Some might be real casual and have no emotion. and be genuine. And then some might be a great big emotional experience and have no genuine lasting effect. It comes down to what is genuinely in your heart. And if you're genuinely seeking God in the way that I found him, you will. And it's not just my word. I've got hundreds of men that I know that have found him in this same way. Get alone with him, get real with him, get raw with him, and he will meet you there. It might not be right away like it happened with me. It might be a week from then. But you keep seeking because you believe you're going to find something. You keep asking because you believe you're going to get an answer. You keep knocking because you believe the door will be open. That is faith. Faith pursues. And I pursued God. And he came after me, and he found me, and he met me, and he transformed my life. And through me, he's helped a lot of people. And those people are going to help people, and those people are going to help people. And you can be one of those people too. You might not even go into no kind of ministry or anything, but when you have a transformed life, it has an effect, an awesome effect on the people around you. It heals relationships. It creates new opportunities. I have a family now. I never thought I'd have one again. He is a good God, and he is real.
Man, that's so awesome. That's so awesome. Well, Jordan, I think, man, again, right there, you hit the topic, and I mean, you hit on every key point there, and I look forward to doing some more podcasts with you, man. That was great. I think we probably have been on for like an hour now, and it was nice. It's probably nice for the listeners to finally have somebody that's talking far more than I am talking. I talk a lot, so
on the whole thing, but
no, I just did an episode yesterday about preparing for marriage with a co-host in California, and after we got off, I was telling her like I was supposed to do a podcast with you, and I was like, Jordan is going to be able to talk the whole time, and it'll be kind of nice because I'll be able to take a break, so it worked out exactly the way I thought it would. And man, I appreciate having you on, dude. I can't wait to have some further discussions and kind of see, kind of what we were talking about before, and some exciting things that are to come. So
for sure,
dude, I'm probably gonna let you go, but if you guys would give the Veritas 21 podcast a follow over on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, subscribe on YouTube, follow us on Spotify, leave a Apple podcast review, because that will increase the analytics to get Jordan's testimony out there that I think a lot of people can really take from that. Very powerful. So you guys have a great rest of your week, and God bless.